The phone on the night desk screamed at 3:02 a.m. like it had swallowed a hornet. Ethan Rivera slammed his palm down, and the ringtone cut off. The monitor above him flickered, a grainy black and white of the West Wing hallway, the one that still smelled faintly of mothballs and old cedar. He rubbed his eyes, too tired to think, and picked up the handset. "Stanley Hotel, night desk," he said, voice sandpapered from too many late shifts. A woman's voice, small and sharp, breathed his name. "Ethan? It's Claire Harper, the last guest. They just checked me out. I don't know where I am." He blinked. Claire Harper was supposed to check out at noon. She had been staying in room 217 for 3 nights for a writer's retreat. He glanced at the system. The screen said checkout scheduled, not completed. The housekeeping log showed her room as occupied. Ethan looked at the digital keys on his desk. Room 217, occupied. The status dot was stubbornly red. "Where are you, Ms. Harper?" he asked, trying to keep calm. There was a weird scrape on the line, like someone moving a heavy chair. Claire whispered. "Up on the service road. By the old bell tower. I woke up and Ethan, I booked through the front. I left my key on the desk and my lamp was..." Her voice shook. "I checked out at 3. And they said the room was empty." Ethan's fingers tightened around the receiver. Outside, wind clawed at the hotel eaves. The Stanley sat on its hill like a sleeping giant, its windows dark like closed eyes. People told stories about the place all the time. Tourists loved the thrill. But Ethan had worked nights here for almost a year. He knew the building's ordinary ghost stories, the piano that played itself, the laughter in an empty ballroom, and he had learned not to let them wrinkle his face. Tonight felt different. The air tasted like static. "We'll come get you," he said. "Where exactly are you?" "The gravel near the maintenance gate. The highway lights are behind me." Her breath hitched. "Please, Ethan. Hurry." He hung up, grabbed his jacket, and felt something heavy settle in his stomach. The old hotel had a slow, patient heartbeat that you felt in your bones when you stayed long enough. Tonight, that heartbeat sounded anxious. He met Claire on the gravel by the low stone wall. She was thin under her coat, eyes rimmed in red, hair in a messy knot. The bell tower loomed behind her like a silhouette of a man watching. A single street lamp threw her shadow long and thin across the loose stones. "Thank you," she said, voice tiny. Your desk said my room was empty. Said it never existed." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" "Your reservation. They said there was no record. The clerk said, and I quote, 'No one ever stayed here in 217. But I paid. I left my key. My suitcase." She looked down the slope at the parking lot. "My suitcase is here. I left it in the car to grab a coat, and when I came back the valet said it was gone." Ethan's breath caught. He signaled his 2 security guys, Nolan and Priya, who were leaning by the patrol car. The 3 of them walked back up the path to the hotel. Behind them, Claire trailed like someone who had been dragged out of a dream. At the front desk, the night logbook sat open, the ink fresh where Ethan had signed off on meals earlier. He pulled up the reservation system and typed. "Room 217, no check-in record. No guest. No billing." He felt a cold slide down his spine. He knew the system like a map, and this blank place was not supposed to be blank. "Maybe someone made a mistake," Nolan said, trying to sound casual but his jaw was tight. Priya shone her flashlight down the hall where portrait frames watched them like storybook characters frozen mid-smile. The old carpet swallowed their steps. Ethan thought of the wedding photo in the lobby, the one with everyone smiling under a heavy, antique chandelier. Nothing about the hotel's face changed. Yet somewhere inside, a door had shifted. They took the service elevator to the 2nd floor. The elevator smelled like lemon oil and wires. When it stopped, the corridor unspooled before them, thick carpeting, brass sconces, the faint sound of the boiler humming. Room 217 was at the end, tucked in a corner. Ethan's hand hovered over the doorknob. He felt suddenly intrusive, like someone about to open an old book that wasn't meant to be read. He unlocked the door with the master key, slow and precise. The latch clicked. For a second, nothing happened. Then the door swung inward and the room looked exactly as Claire had described: warm lamplight, a small suitcase on the chair, a scarf draped over the arm of a sofa, all exactly as if someone had just stepped out for a moment. Ethan stepped inside, breath shallow. The air smelled faintly of the lavender oil Claire said she used. Her handwriting was on the notepad at the desk. A paperback with a folded corner lay on the nightstand. It was an ordinary room the way a painting is ordinary, full of careful strokes that combine to form truth. Except the bedspread was smooth, untouched. The television was off. The bedside alarm clock read 3:07 a.m. in blinking red numbers. Ethan called Claire's name without thinking. Silence settled around him like dust. He picked up the book. The page he touched felt like it had just been read. He moved to the bathroom and flicked the light on. The faucet was dry. The towels were folded. He opened the closet. Coats, hangers, exactly one set of clothing. No footprints in the carpet. No evidence of any hurried exit. On the nightstand, the phone rang. Ethan stared. The phone on the old wooden table had a tiny sticker with the house line number. He reached across and picked it up. "Room 217? A voice said into the receiver. It was a man's voice, tired and distant. "Is anyone still there?" Ethan swallowed. "This is Ethan at the front desk," he said. "We have your guest here, Claire Harper. She says she checked out at 3. A small, impatient sound came from the receiver. "We don't have a record of that room ever hosting a guest," the voice said. "We were closed when she arrived. No check-ins after midnight. Please notify the authorities if you find anything." The line clicked dead. Ethan's mouth went dry. He looked at the room again. The suitcase was zipped shut. A small silver key lay on top of it, the kind Claire had always liked to keep on her keyring. He remembered her saying she left her key on the desk. It wasn't there. He called the number back, and this time the line went to a sterile automated voice, one of those corporate messages that said the call could not be completed. The security cameras in the hallway had shown no one leaving the corridor. The main doors had been locked since midnight save for his own swipe. The keycard logs showed no exit. Claire was back at the front desk, hands clenched, watching him with a look like someone watching a weather report predicting a storm and hoping it would be wrong. "I checked out," she said again. "I signed something. I said goodbye. They handed me a receipt. I walked outside and the fog was thick. I tried to call Anne and you answered." Ethan felt the hotel's building bones press against his shoulders. He had to decide: believe the woman who looked like she had been shaken out of sleep, or believe the machine that showed empty logs and blinking statuses. Machines were supposed to be reliable. People were messy. He closed his eyes. The Stanley had always loved tricks with time. Guests told tales of waking in rooms that smelled of lavender from another era, of finding letters that were decades old in their wardrobes. People laughed the stories off when the sun came up. But at 3 in the morning, with a woman on the gravel who insisted she had checked out, and a room that was both occupied and empty, the stories felt less like jokes. "Show me the receipt," Ethan said finally. Claire fumbled through her bag like someone digging for a bone. Her fingers found paper, and she slid it across the desk. The receipt was stamped with the hotel logo, the date, the room number she had written in her handwriting. The signature at the bottom matched the name Ethan remembered from the reservation. He looked at the paper under the desk light. The ink glinted like a lie under a magnifying glass. The hotel's printer had produced receipts in a certain thin font. This one looked right. It had the total, the tax, an extra charge for late-night room service, a charge for a coffee that Claire insisted she did not order. "This is impossible," Nolan said, voice low. Ethan swallowed again. He slid open the logbook where the day's shift wrote their notes. There was no signature for Claire. No bellman note. The housekeeping sheet was blank for 217. The cameras didn't show her leaving the building. He felt the seams of the night pull tight. He asked Claire to sit, made her tea, tried to give her the ordinary comforts of an ordinary hotel while chaos hummed like a faulty light behind everything. She warmed her hands on the mug like someone trying to hold on to a tiny sun. Ethan watched her, and his chest pinched with a sudden, stupid tenderness. People said the hotel chose its own guests. He hoped not tonight. He decided to check the outside cameras. Maybe she had wandered off. Maybe she was right and some clerk had pretended otherwise. He walked to the security room where screens stacked like a wall of tiny windows. He dialed back footage to just after 3. The West Gate camera showed Claire walking away from the gravel and toward the highway. The timestamp read 3:01 a.m. She waved at something, maybe a thoughtless gesture at the dark, and then she slowed, as if she felt a hand at her shoulder. 2 minutes later she was running. The footage blurred, not because of a glitch but as if heat haze had risen, swallowing the image. The frame then cut to static for 3 frames and popped back. When it came back, Claire was gone. Ethan leaned closer, heart thudding. He zoomed in on the last clear frame. Something stood in the road. He froze the image. At first it looked like a lamppost, then a coat, then a figure with the wrong angle. It stood half in shadow and half in the lamplight, impossible to make out. He muted the speakers, but behind the screens he could still hear the hotel's sighing pipes. Maybe she left to go to a friend, Priya said, voice too bright. Maybe she took a different road. Maybe, Ethan said. He did not believe the maybe. He deleted the footage from the active screen and saved copies to his tablet. He took screenshots. He called the head of housekeeping on her personal phone. No answer. He paged the general manager on the in-house system. No reply. He returned to 217. The room remained perfectly ordinary, like a picture paused between breaths. He crossed to the window and pulled back the curtain. Looking down the hill, he could see the stretch of highway like a black ribbon, a single car a tiny moving tooth on it. The wind stole across the panes and made the curtains ripple like breath. On the bed, the blanket had shifted slightly as if someone had been sitting at the foot and then stood up. Ethan felt every hair on his arms stand. He reached down to straighten the blanket. His fingers brushed a small scrap of paper tucked at the corner of the pillow like a secret. He slid it out. It was a receipt, not for a room, but for a taxi. A handwritten time, 3 a.m. The driver's name was scribbled in a hand he did not know. At the bottom, someone had written, in a hurried script, "Do not open the window." Ethan's lungs filled and emptied like bellows. He looked toward the bathroom where steam sometimes gathered in the morning, and he realized the window was cracked open a 1/4 inch. A thin, cold wind whispered in. The phone at the night desk rang again. Ethan let it scream. This time, the voice on the other end was close, too close, like someone breathing at the other end of a tunnel. "Ethan," it whispered. "Check the hall. Don't trust the mirror in 217. The line went dead. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway with the scrap of paper in his hand, the hotel humming around him like a living thing. He had 2 facts now that did not fit together, Claire's receipt, and the system that said she had never been here. He had a voice on the telephone warning him about a mirror. And outside on the gravel, a woman who insisted she had checked out at 3. He put the paper back on the pillow and walked into the hallway. The lights overhead hummed and the carpet felt like a long throat under his feet. He could feel the building watching him. Ahead, at the bend in the corridor, the mirror above the old console table darkened like a pupil. Ethan stopped a step away, every sense ringing. He realized, in a way that landed in his body like an object, that the mirror was not the one he had seen before. It was too clear, and too far from the frame. In its reflection the corridor stretched 2 feet longer than it should have. The wallpaper pattern seemed to repeat and never meet. Ethan drew in a breath and then, because fear is a thing that also demands action, he reached toward the glass. His hand hovered inches from the mirror and for a moment, the corridor behind him looked back with someone standing in it, Claire, standing sterile and still, eyes not blinking. He jerked his hand back. The reflection vanished. The mirror only showed empty hall. Nolan called from the stairwell. "Ethan, you have to see this." Ethan turned, heart loud as a drum. For a second the night felt like a held breath. He walked toward the stairwell. The emergency exit door at the back of the hall was propped open. A gust of wind pressed the paper-thin curtain inside and out, like a mouth opening. On the stairwell landing, a strip of wet footprints led from the door and stopped at the stair's edge as if someone had vanished. Ethan looked down. The footprints pointed toward the basement, toward the old boiler room where things that were better left sleeping had been kept for decades. He swallowed hard. He felt the hotel leaning in close. He felt, like a third presence between the building and the night, the idea that history is not only something in books, it can be a thing that waits in rooms and decides, sometimes, to stay. Then his radio crackled to life. "We're getting a call," Priya said. Her voice was small. "From the 217-room phone. It's on hold. It's playing static." Ethan's breath hitched. He could hear it now through the thin radio, a wash of white noise that sounded like a crowd far away. In the noise, beneath everything else, a sound that might have been a voice whispered 3 words. "Don't come down." Ethan should have stayed. He should have called the police. He should have done any number of bureaucratic, sensible things. But the thing that sat heavy on his ribs was not bureaucracy. It was the truth that had just lodged itself there. Claire had checked out at 3. The hotel said the room was empty. And somewhere between those two facts, something had moved. He started down the stairs. The last thing he saw before the stairwell swallowed him was the mirror in the hall, reflecting not a corridor, but the faint shape of someone standing at the foot of the stairs with an arm raised as if to beckon. He told himself it was a trick of the light. He told himself many things as he descended. At the bottom of the stairs, the hallway opened into the old service corridor that led to the boiler room. The lights flickered. A thin smell of oil and something sweet, perfume and metal, hung in the air. The footprints continued, damp and dark, and they led to a door he had been told to never, ever open. Ethan reached for the handle. His fingers were numb. He turned the knob. The door swung inward. Something moved on the other side.